So I got to tell you folks something. By the way, Tom Rayner, Jess Rayner, this is the Church Answers podcast. Glad to have you here on YouTube and on your favorite podcasting app. Thanks for being here. Subscribe on YouTube, rating and review on the podcasting app. Why do I say that all the time? Because that gets more people to come here and to learn about this ministry that Cheney and Associates is paying for. They're paying the bills for this podcast, and we try to do this as a ministry to churches. And there are 375,000 churches, and we haven't done the study in a little while, but the last time we did it, 2 out of 3 churches connected with us in one way or another, either by getting some of our free resources or some of our paid resources. And that's pretty incredible. And not only is it incredible, but it's a big responsibility. And so when we start talking about doing these podcasts and doing all the articles and everything that we do, I take it not only as an honor, but as a responsibility as well. But here's where I was going with this, Jess. I bet you have no idea where I was going. We have another free resource called the Everything Church Resource Directory. And it is absolutely the place to get all the information you need about any resource for your church or for your ministry. Let me just give you one example. One example is there's a company that actually put an ad in there in the directory called Craft Book Publishers, and
I like
and
this. Keep going.
and they basically a guided publishing, self-publishing company, one of the leading out there in the world. And if you want to know where to go to self-publishing, you go to the Everything Church Resources Directory. There in publishing is Craft. And that's just one example, Jess. That's
a great example.
I kind of picked randomly. I like the people at Craft. It just kind of works a whole lot. But thank you for not only listening to podcasts or watching podcasts, but consuming all the information we put out and the resources that we offer to you. Thank you for doing that. And we're going to talk about money today. And we're going to talk about why pastors don't often talk about money. That sounds a little redundant there. And we're going to talk about someone who knows how to handle money. Cheney and Associates, the CPA firm for the church. Over 1,100 churches that they serve right now. Just contact them. You'll see that in the show notes, and you'll be ready to just put all of your bookkeeping and your taxes and everything financial with Cheney. They are the best. So, Jess, I don't know where you learn to communicate finances, giving in the church, but it couldn't have been from me, because I don't remember ever doing what you do.
Well, you were a catalyst. You recommended a book to me a while ago called, I think it's Not Your Parents' Offering Plate Anymore.
Yeah, great book.
Yeah, and it was eye-opening for me in a way that people in the nonprofit giving sector, churches are losing their slice of the pie fast.
Exactly. You are completely right there.
And the only reason is because they're not asking.
Yes.
And that just summarized pretty much the whole book for you. It's still worth the read. Short book, great book. But that was a catalyst for me to go, okay. I've struggled with this as a lead pastor. I've struggled with this topic over the years to address giving. I do believe it's a discipleship. It's important to address. But then there's also the element of that ask to give, right? You can teach about it in discipleship and tell people why, but at the end of the day, they often still need to be asked to give. And that's, I think, where it gets uncomfortable. It's easier to talk about biblically, what does the Bible say about giving? Here's why. But hey, we need you to give, and here's why. That's the harder jump. And that book was a catalyst in going, it's not that people don't want to give. Sometimes they just want to be asked.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that simple.
By multiple people, multiple organizations. And if their church is not asking, they may at least have a tacit assumption that the church really doesn't need to have money for the church.
Or want it. Yeah. And so it's really, for me to get over that uncomfortable nature of asking people for money. One, I've been in church planning, and I kind of had to get over that really fast just to get the church started. And I coach church planners all the time. Like, you just got to go ask. You got to go ask. but that is carried into the life of our church as well as that ask. And so finding ways to naturally get them to the natural ways that you can do the ask. There's key times, like it's classic example, worship service. There's the element of maybe you pass offering plates, we have boxes in the back, however you do it. The reality is there's almost this expectation that just when the plates are passed, hey, we're doing an offering time, we're gonna do a prayer song, and they just start
Hmm.
passing the plates. A lot of people are like, well, is this the time I put money in there? They may not even know what it's for. That's the most opportune time. It's a natural process to explain why you give and the purpose behind it and what it's going to go for.
And the book that you mentioned is Not Your Parents' Offering Plate by J. Cliff Christopher.
Okay.
So we're going to put that in the show notes. And if you're interested in that, I have never met J. Cliff Christopher, but I bet I've sold as many of his books as he has. Because I love that little book.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
All right. Another element where you're comfortable and other pastors who do this are comfortable is you frame giving in gratitude.
Hmm.
I mean, that's one of the things you do consistently, if not persistently. You don't go up there and say, "Folks, we need money. You got to start giving." You thank them for what they have given, and
Hmm.
that becomes a lot more natural than just acting like you're begging.
Right. Yeah. That's typically how on Sunday mornings when we move into a time of letting people know how they can give. That's another good thing. Not just asking, can you give, but how they can give. I start telling them the ways they can do it. I start with the thank you, and I genuinely mean it. And I often say, I know I repeat this, but it's from the bottom of my heart that your gifts mean so much because we believe God's given us a big vision at our church, and we want to see that vision carried out. And so it means so much that you're willing to follow through, and actually giving back, giving what God's already given you, giving it back because it matters. And so there's a genuineness of my heart that I really am thankful. It means a lot. And that's a key thing. Thanking people when they give is a really just small thing you can do. And that's often how I start during our worship services about when we go into our giving time is simple thankfulness.
One thing that Mike Glenn would do often when he's now retired, but lead pastor at Brentwood, he would have a story videoed onto the screen, a testimony, someone talking about how your giving affected me or this ministry. And it was always powerful. He wasn't trying to just jerk at our emotions, but he was trying to remind people this is what happens to the money you give. So
Mm-hmm.
gratitude is one of the things, but showing how the money's being used. And you mentioned that from time to time as well.
Yeah, I don't do it every single week, but I try to do it with some regularity. I like to talk about how the church gives
Hmm.
before I tell people how they can give to the church.
That's a good
Um,
point.
and so it just kind of sets that tone of telling stories. Why especially look at giving from younger generations. They tend to be more cause oriented rather than institutionally oriented. They want to know why. What is this going towards? What is the motivating factor? And it's a great opportunity to recast vision too. All this ties together. But thanking people first and then saying, hey, this is how the church is utilizing these resources. Here's how it's going to greater God's kingdom. Here's how the impact that then kind of sets the paves the way for then going, now we'd like for you to give. Here's how you do it.
Well, and let's talk about this for just a moment, and won't park on it long because we've only got a couple of minutes left. These things go by so fast, or about 1 minute left. But the giving at the church at Spring Hill, Church Spring Hill is more like a middle class community. It almost feels just right in the middle of the middle. I don't know if it's a little upper, but
We're more upper than middle, but
okay, but
more middle upper than middle.
then middle.
Yeah.
The thing about it is though, you're meeting the budget. A new church, you're 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 right on target, and sometimes you're a little over, sometimes you're a little under, but by the end of the year comes, you're probably a little bit over, and you're meeting that challenging budget. So you got people who are getting the message, and they want to give because they understand the reason why they give. So
Hmm.
I wanted just to say that in the context of what you do.
Yeah. We're maybe understanding who we are as a church is helpful for a lot of people. That I no matter what size church you are, no matter what budget you are, I think there's an effectiveness to being thankful, being grateful, telling and communicating the vision and why it matters. I think at any stage that it makes a major difference. It's amazing to see. We're transparent with our numbers. We put our budget numbers out there every single week for people to see. And if we're sometimes a little behind our budget, almost within a month or two, it gets caught up. It's like those people are watching those numbers. And then sometimes when we get ahead, they don't slow down. They're like, oh, more people. And so it's just like both sides of it. When you're having this mentality and thankful and gratefulness, whether you're behind a little or ahead a little, they tend to be, people respond in positive ways to both of that, with just finding those comfortable ways, natural ways in the worship service or even outside the worship service, to talk about it. And even in the weekly email, we always give an option to give, because it's coupled with a lot of stories and activities that are happening in the church.
Our time is up. I almost wanted to go down a path of, because you mentioned the word transparency. What happens to a church, when the pastor's not transparent? I'm not going to have you answer that question today, but I've seen examples of pastors trying to hide the giving from the people and not tell people what it is. Don't quite understand the motivation, but everybody I've ever seen do that's terrible leader. So we'll just kind of leave it at that. Terrible leadership.
Well, I'm glad I said I was transparent before you said that, so it's good to know.
Thank you for being a part of the Church Answers podcast. Thanks, YouTubers. A wave to you. Sometimes I can get the thumbs up to work. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. But thank you for being a part of this. And also those of you who are listening on your favorite podcasting app for the rating and review. We appreciate it. And as always, we're grateful to Cheney and Associates for being the sponsor and our friend at Church Answers. We'll see you in the next episode.